Welcome to the Digital Transformationists podcast, where we get curious together about what technology is teaching us about human ingenuity, resilience, and the mysterious force that magnetizes us towards connection with one another. I'm Katie Thomas, and together with our host, Christian Lane, founding partner of Precipio Consulting, our co-host, G-Love, Grammy-nominated artist, and our incredible guests, we embark on a journey to better understand technology's role in amplifying connection between us all. We'll hear from technologists, practitioners, revolutionaries, innovators, environmentalists, artists, and more, all sharing their experiences with technology and how it's affected their lives and industries. In this episode, we're thrilled and honored to welcome Carol Thompson, a trailblazing entrepreneur and iconic Austin community and technology leader who exemplifies the city's forward-thinking and easygoing attitude. Carol has been witness to the city's expansive growth and has been a part of critical initiatives that have encouraged some of the world's top technology companies to open shop and make Austin their home. We talk about the nerd bird, Austin's ties to California, the role the University of Texas has in attracting talent and ideas, mentoring as a way to stay up on the current approaches and trends, and the hidden gems the city offers for those who veer off the beaten path.
Well, hey, G, good to see you. How you been?
Hey, Christian, I'm doing good, man. I'm enjoying the first days of summer and trying to work as little as possible. I just came off the beach, and I'm driving to Saratoga Springs tonight, so I'm happy to get a chance to connect with you and Carol today. So yeah, how you
Awesome.
doing, man?
I'm great, and congrats on your latest newborn. Four total boys, right?
4 total boys.
Woo.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
19, 5, 1.5, and 4 days.
Whew. Well, you're lucky to get sleep. I hear you're sleeping okay.
My wife's a rock star. She's crushing it, and yeah. So I owe her
That's so
a debt
cool.
of gratitude.
Well, speaking of gratitude, we've got a guest on today that I feel I owe a debt of gratitude to. Back in the late 90s, I was in college at UT, and a big goal for a lot of us in the business school was to somehow find a way of staying in Austin. And typically we got recruited to Houston or Dallas. I got recruited to Dallas. So I like to tell people I did my time in Dallas, and I did everything I could to find a way to get back into Austin.
Okay.
And, I finally did. But it seems now, at least these days, it's a lot easier to stay in Austin, in the world of technology. And I think we owe I owe a debt of gratitude to Carol for that. And I'm looking forward to hearing her story. G, you've got some things you want to share about her and kind of her bio. You want to touch on some of these highlights?
Sure. Okay. Carol, usually you're not here when I say this, but let me just gush on you while you're right there. Introducing Carol Thompson, tech-savvy entrepreneur, economic development strategist, mentor, business advisor, all-around trailblazer. Carol was a pivotal figure in expanding Austin's business landscape. As a leader on the first Austin Chamber of Commerce business recruiting trip to California in the late 80s, Carol and the Chamber team laid the groundwork for a future influx of those companies into Austin. Carol has been recognized by the Austin Business Journal as one of Austin's 5 most powerful women, and named by the Austin American Statesman as one of Austin's top 25 tech players to know. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the wonderful Carol Thompson.
Well, thank you.
Austin's known as a college town in a lot of worlds, and more so over the last few decades as a tech town, thanks to you. It's quite a cultural place to be as well. I think we love the outdoors, and we got these beautiful lakes and rivers that are limestone, and we have nice clean water. But tell us about your experience with Austin and how you've seen it develop over the past 30 years or so.
Well, it's a lot, when we went on the first trip to California, people had to pull out a map to see where Austin was. And that was kind of like, that was an epiphany of sorts. But at that time, they already were challenged in California because if they wanted to volunteer in their children's school, they couldn't because they lived so far away from where they worked. And so some of them were already looking at us, and what were the reasons they'd look at us? Because the 1,500 square foot house, now take a deep breath, was about $75,000 in Austin. Right. Yeah. And, we had, as you've already said, schools of higher education here. We had the great outdoors then and now. And it was a sleepy college town. Like the reason I'm here is it was just that. We're in California and it was smog, and you open up the paper and you see sleepy college town, state capital, and the University of Texas, and clean streets, and didn't know one soul.
So what sparked you, I guess, to kind of get involved and get this trip out there? Like what was that spark?
The spark was we realized we didn't have everything here, but we needed to work because we had TI and IBM with the early companies here.
Okay.
And then we also, part of the trip is we didn't have any kind of convention center here. And so we visited their convention center. And then I don't know how to say this with a smile or smirk, light rail, right? To be continued. And so we, toured those places. And then the companies that we toured out there were the likes of Applied Material and Apple.
Yeah.
And it was pretty exciting, really. There were the community volunteers and then learning about each other, the people that went on the trip from Austin. You knew who were the good drivers and who would almost turn around in the center of the road to go the other way, Anyway.
So the inside joke on the light rail is that it's always been too late and it's always been too expensive.
Okay.
Right.
Like that's always been the argument for 30 years now. So again, it's too late and too expensive today.
It is. And, now what are they talking about? And putting a track underground in Austin. So we'll see where they get this time.
Wow.
But, COVID, one of the pluses of COVID was there was no traffic, right? Sad plus, but I live about 15 minutes away from downtown Austin. When I chaired the board, I had a set so I could leave my house and be in my seat in 13 to 15 minutes. And then one day it was 20 minutes and 25. So what's happening?
I was reading your interview and you said, well, every time you're sitting in traffic, you said, well, I can only blame myself.
Right. And of course, the other signs by the side of the road then said drive friendly.
Oh.
And I thought, well, today we need those back again, right?
Right. How's your road rage, Carol?
Yeah, my road. No, mine's, I'm kind of calm on the road. So, but I have had, speedy cars, I have to tell you, in my stay in Austin. But anyway.
So we've got I always tell people that we've been heavily influenced by California in terms of culture.
Yes, we have.
I like to tell people I'm excited to live on and be a part of this backbone between the Bay Area and California and Austin. And this backbone is it's technology, right? It's all this business and work between these two economies. And we've been very influenced by California. There's a certain level of liberalism in this town, progressiveness, but then again, just technology and a forward kind of thinking. Talk to us more about like how these businesses and how this connection has influenced us here, and perhaps why we're shaped the way we are through these relationships with companies in California.
Well, first off, it's just why did they come to Austin anyway, right? And so what happened was when you take Applied Materials, they didn't want to move their headquarters, and we were very careful not to recruit headquarter companies. Just if they were thinking of expanding, think about us. And so the housing, the reason they came. And I would say some of the CEOs came for golf, right? It was just more important than you think. And some of them eventually, had suppliers that they had in California moved to supply Austin companies, and quality of life and high levels of education. There you have it. And
what about the food?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, the food. That's right. A little variety in the food. Seafood gets flown in now. I kind of laugh when Austin got a sushi place thinking, what? But they made it work, right? They fly the stuff in every day. And no, the food, we have, great restaurants. Sorry to say we've lost some of them during COVID, but I mean, we had all our favorite haunts in town, and some of them are still staying alive. Then we had South by Southwest, and in 1990, I think it started in 1988. So that was also more of a part of evolving with Austin, but that a lot of people think it may have gotten invented, recently.
Yeah. Right. Wait, 1988 was when South by started?
Yeah. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Because I wanted to ask you about that, because as a musician, of course, I've played it and a number of times, and it's such a wow, just what a whirlwind weekend. And I can only imagine how much that's done for the city. I mean, how big is that?
Much. Huge. And it's funny because I had a Computerland franchise at that time. And so in 1990, they said, oh, you need to be down here. You need to come. So it was like what we would know as a card table with a few pamphlets on it from Apple Computer.
Okay.
And I was thinking, where can this place, what's going to happen with something like this?
Right.
And then now, I've had kids with nowhere to stay in my house because they're just all excited to be in Austin, et cetera, right? Yeah, it's big. It's big. And, last year was the challenge of making it go. But it was decent, but it wasn't the excitement of people being here and crowding in the streets. And
right.
There's so much energy. Yeah.
I know it. The police don't like it, but and so much, we get so many people internationally now to Austin. I mean, that kind of grew and popped, which is Austin needed, because we still weren't much of an international student. In fact, we still need to work on that in Austin today, 2021.
Yeah, we could use a few more direct flights.
Yes,
national markets and even some other big, even less big cities would be nice.
Yeah.
Right. When we got British Airways, that was big. Speaking of that, early on in Austin, we didn't really have good flights to California, and so our governor Ann Richards convinced Bob Crandall from American Airlines that he ought to start a route here, and became one of the most successful. The Nerdbird, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're flying to San Jose or San Francisco or Oakland out of Austin, it's the Nerdbird. Okay. And it's funny, I flew that a lot for 12 years or so. I think every 4 to 6 weeks I was on a flight to the Bay Area.
Yeah, everybody knew everyone, right?
Oh yeah, no, you get on there, you're like, okay, what logo is on the T-shirt or the hat or the bag?
Right.
Yep, always. Every now and again, the Nerdbird goes to Las Vegas when it's heavy conference season. Is my take on it too.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
But only temporarily. So with all this business between these two big markets, tied to and driven by this technology backbone, I remember also there was a period of time where we were a lot more resentful of Californians for coming out here, buying, a piece of property, sight unseen, 20-30 over asking. It's still happening today.
Oh, even
and
worse.
There's a huge,
right.
and it's worse. But I think the resentment settled down, at least from what I can tell. I'm sure there's still some, but I think we've accepted that there are people coming and going back and forth out of California. We know people, I think, more closely and intimately now. and it's kind of settled down. Do you have a similar take on that, or you think we're
Yes.
still pretty resentful
Yes.
about it?
No, I think it has settled down because now, people Applied Materials stayed in the headquarters stayed in California, and they have a huge group
Huge.
here.
Mhm.
So we've gotten used to it, I think, and you can collaborate rather than compete.
Exactly.
I mean, but when you look at Austin, this first quarter of this year, 21 headquarter companies moved to Austin.
Wow.
So,
That's the other thing is there's a new
it's
migration.
elusive, right?
Wow.
I mean, people don't realize, but the Chamber of Commerce has all those reports.
Wow.
If you need them, I have them.
I'd love to see where they're putting up shop. Good real estate plays based on that.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Right.
keep buying.
That's right. Keep buying if you find something to buy, like my house.
If you can. Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. My house is in Northwest Hills, and it was 125,000. And
Wow.
the realtor, the moving van said, you could sell this for $1 million in California these days. And, that was 79.
Oh, wow.
Now, guess what? You can do that in Austin, even over that these days.
Funny. It's funny because my whole life has been traveling around the world and all the big cities and all the little towns in the USA especially. And it's always like that. Like there's always a music venue. And like I was just thinking before we got on the call, like the first place I played in Austin was called Liberty Lunch.
Oh, yeah, classic.
Okay, so I was just thinking about it. I was like, wow, I should have bought the building next door to Liberty Lunch when I played it back in 1994. It's probably worth a lot more now.
You'd be amazed
Right?
what you can do with that piece of property now.
And,
actually, you can't do anything with it because it's already built out.
So there's so many things like that. And Austin is, I love Austin. I love playing there. I love the food there. I love the people there. I love that they got the scooters now. I love everything about Austin. So it's one of those places where I've always been like, wow, it'd be so cool to get a place here. But,
and you waited too long?
Well, no, I mean, it's just that you can only sleep in one bed at a time. But we always have like that FOMO thing when talking about like the real estate markets and like, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it's like that anywhere. But I mean, so are you happy about the kind of you've been a big catalyst for the success, all these people coming in, the cities continues to blossom. I mean, the bad side of it is gentrification.
Right. We have a lot of work to do in that regard.
But it's also a positive that the city's on the whole is lifting up. So, yeah, I mean, speak on that. Like, is that all positive?
Well, someone just needs to go online and Google Alan Graham with the homelessness, the situation we have in Austin. But the flip side of that is to see what they're doing in the future, the plans they have. And they're pretty comprehensive. And he's gotten a lot of national, if not international press. He used to sell real estate in one of his early days. I mean, the challenges we have are affordable real estate for the people that live here, right?
Right.
And it's tough because if you sell your house, where are you going to go to stay? Somewhere close to the city you love. It's very difficult. Very difficult. But change happens. What I like, what we really need here, because we've got caught up with just a lot of money in Austin, to work on civic entrepreneurship. How are people giving back? And because I believe every single person needs to be involved with this.
Right.
Kai and I were talking earlier about, I said, even to mentor one child in school, you can do that online, or you can also do it face to face. There's no excuse for not being able to do that. Yes, some people need to be trained how to be mentors, but you change kids' lives. And the statistics about kids learning to read are pretty bleak. And we need them in the workforce here.
Yeah.
Right.
Just think about that here. I mean, I was going to say, way back when at the University of Texas, I had a technician here one day fixing my refrigerator, and he was a music major at UT, and he couldn't get a job that would pay his own wages to live here. And so there he was with the goop from the refrigerator, but I'm sure he's well employed now in the music scene in Austin.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you about that, like, because you know, like the Austin, like Keep Austin Weird was the T-shirt back in the day, and you know, Austin kind of built a lot of the characters built on the creative, the musicians, and there's obviously a wonderful history of the blues there, and so just like New York or any other great or you know, San Francisco or any other great breeding ground of, or incubator, I should say, of musicians and creatives, and now they're getting maybe priced out. Yeah. Like that's is that some of the heart and soul getting ripped out of the heart of Texas?
Yeah, but see, we need to be working on that. But
Right.
Everybody's so stretched out, it seems, these days.
Yeah.
Because we used to have, you know, the Chamber of Commerce used to have a committee working just solely on that. And if we wanted to make it happen, we need to be working on that. It's not just going to fall out of the sky. But when some people move here, you hear some Austinites complain about, oh, people are moving here from elsewhere. Well, for those of us who are here, you have to be
Where we come
welcoming to those. Yeah, that's right. We didn't come from here. So to welcome them, and there are plenty of places to be involved in Austin. This morning, someone at Apple told me Austin now has 1,000 nonprofits.
Mm.
Well, if you can't find yourself in one of those, you're not to be found. But yes, so the new people like people in my neighborhood, some of them that could retire and go elsewhere can't find anywhere. So they're staying here with much more house than they need. And the question is then, what is the price that you'd leave your house? And some of them have gotten pretty big prices.
Yeah. So you mentioned some of that community side and kind of doing good, mentoring and you know, those kinds of things, and perhaps more civic minded, you know, entities and maybe organizations. Are there any that come to mind that you like to highlight or share with the audience?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about or share one that started in my home in the early 90s. And it's called Young Women's Alliance, because in my life, the experience, even chairing the board of the chamber, people would assume I was waiting for my husband at the table. You know, I was the third woman in 117 years to chair and a Yankee to boot. So the first time my accent came, what is this? Who is this? And they had a Young Men's Business League in Austin that had been around for years and years and years. But what about the girls? So we started, actually, there were 5 girls who didn't know each other, graduated from school here, and their fathers said, you should talk to Carol Thompson. So I had 5 of them in my living room. And, you know, some basic networking, how to look people straight in the eye. And I think the handshake's going to come back after COVID, but I'm not quite sure, right? And, you know, you handshake and put your name tag on the right, because that's where your eyes go when you shake hands. And started with 5, and today, I know you were going to do that. So
some old school basics. I don't really think much
I never heard
now,
that.
you know?
I know, but you know what? I was sharing just briefly with a young woman today that a couple guys will go, well, look to the right. I mean, why are you putting your name tag on the right? And well, that's where you shake hands. Well, what if you want it on the left? Well, you don't shake hands with your left hand, do you? So it was, you know, there's always one in the crowd, right, to ask the question.
Wow.
And this was based on young leadership for women and volunteering to give back to the city and to coach and mentor other young girls in the schools here. And that group, even during COVID, is increased because see, young women who move to town hear about it. And how do they connect? Because they're sitting alone in their apartment. And It's up to 375 young women, much more diverse than it used to be. We have to work on diversity in Austin,
Yep.
Texas, a lot.
A lot. Yeah, we have a pretty harsh history there too.
Yeah, we do. And so it's wonderful. And I still serve on the advisory board, and because I told them, I am going to live to 103. So I just know that. And I just know it, right? Because I have a lot of ideas yet to be
So
out
much
there.
to do. Yeah.
So much to do. That's right. You just have to find people that can keep up with you.
That's right.
That's
So
right.
Where do you find all this energy?
I think it's got a God-given energy. It's like my father ran a machine shop in Gloucester with the fishing boats where I was born. And he used to say, when I was very young, I can remember him peering in my eyes and saying, girls can do anything. When you hear that from the get-go, and that was, as you know, quite a few years ago,
Yeah.
it just, kind of like, why not? Why can't I do that?
That's right.
And so I've served on the Federal Reserve Board and had dinner with Alan Greenspan. And, that night I just closed my eyes and thought, if my parents could see me now, if only.
What a moment.
Yeah, it's a moment. And so the chamber again, if you're there, and some of it is right in Austin years ago, Apple, I remember, asked, when we move, we want to make sure that our people are connected. And someone asked me, well, how can we get connected? And at that time, honestly, it was just raise your hand.
Right. Volunteer. Yeah.
Right. Volunteer. You'd volunteer. And so Austin, as you know, has a great volunteer community.
Yeah.
And so the growth and development of women has been wonderful. And we have an event called Austin Under 40 that are the superstars for that. And most recently, one of the winners was an Indian physician, and he had an 8-month-old child. And this is a beautiful story, I think. He said he was concerned that if something happened to him, what would happen to his 8-month-old son. He said, based on coming to the event this evening, Austin would take care of my 8-month-old son.
Oh, wow.
And that, here we are in 2021 with someone making a comment like that. I mean, that's awesome.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
That is beautiful.
I so you're from Gloucester. Actually, the last gig I just played was in Hamilton, Mass. Which is right down the street.
I lived on a Tobacco Lake in Hamilton in the summer.
Okay.
And oh my heavens, yes.
Yeah, we live up in Cape Cod, and I don't want to make you homesick, but I had the whole belly clam platter.
You know how many of those steamed clams I can eat? You don't even want to know. It makes you sick, but it's kind of like, you just can't wait to go back. And yeah. Oh, it's a great place to be. But it was a blue collar town then and now. When you ask about your own hometown, there's 25,000 people then and now, but they like it like that, right?
Yeah.
And the Portuguese and Italian
That's right.
fishermen that you grew up with. When I go back to reunions, they can make up the football team at any given moment, it seems like, with the talk. But it's good to go there because, it's a centering thing and we need those towns. They're working on the blue economy there for the ocean economy. So they have an institute working with UMass on that. And we need that too.
I was just wanting to kind of circle back, just like this past couple of years, right? It's been a huge awakening in our country and around the world with the sexual harassment cases in the workplace, and the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement. Right. And I know for me, it's changed or just maybe more self-conscious in a positive way of how I interact with women that I work with, or even just interact with socially, Do you find that things are changing just on the ground level in the workplace for a positive? Is there more equalization? Are people more thoughtful in their interactions with their female coworkers? And yeah, can you just talk on that? Like,
In
are we
my
making
opinion,
progress?
Making progress, but not fast enough.
Not fast enough.
Right.
Right.
Because, when we talk about who are the enlightened males in town?
Uh-huh.
There's work to be done. I mean, some of them are still very difficult to work with and think it's all about them and don't really understand it's a team that gets them where they are. And, and we have many young entrepreneurs in town. And what we need is work of how do you connect them with a seasoned entrepreneur that can teach them that? Because if no one, how are they going to learn? Some of them have wives that probably straighten them out, right? And but it's a challenge. You can see it everywhere from going to the bars and have someone preempt you, when you're going to get your drink. It's kind of like, excuse me, and at work. And at work, women are being moved up in companies, more so than they have been in the past. But they can still tell you some stories.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. And, teaching them that on one hand, they're responsible for themselves. And the former CEO of Pepsi was just saying, one of her themes yesterday in a conference was, know the politics in the office, but don't be part of the politics in the office.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty key too, because you can just be drawn in and think it's a power play if you're in the in group.
Right.
And then who else are you intimidating? And you have to think about, how many introverts do you have that are working for you? And how are you mindful of how I had to learn that myself, because as you can tell, I'm, big in your face type, and I have to be mindful of my own son is an introvert, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while for me to adjust.
So what are, I'm sorry. What are some of the, go ahead, please.
So I finished. You go.
Well, I was just, so that's really interesting to me. The thing you said earlier about the handshake and the name tag on the right side. I mean, are there, when you're mentoring younger workers, what other kind of things like that are you teaching people that seem like such kind of insignificant things, but actually probably make a big difference in
in the whole scheme,
yeah,
right? Yeah. Well, it's thinking of before you go about who the audience is, right? So you have a couple of questions in your mind already, and the kids will ask, or young people to ask, like if the three of us were in conversation, standing, and they wanted to speak, how would they engage, right? And part of it is, tapping one of the three of us on the shoulder and hoping that person gets it and looks around and includes them in the conversation. And then be asking people, this is a generic, ask them where they're from or what brought them to Austin, Texas. And many times that just expands the conversation. But for some, it's, what's the biggest challenge when you got to Austin, Texas? Because very small companies, that they don't get the automatic. How many people do you have working at Percipio?
50 something.
Yeah. So you're already in with that many people. But some of the small startups, that was why having the Austin Technology Incubator here, we were the first one in the country in 1990.
Oh, wow.
And so you meet people there and realize there are other people to whom you could connect. And I remember early on, lawyers from California would come here and sit in, and they were just amazed at, if someone meets you downtown and said, well, come up to this meeting, and, entrepreneurs show up at the meeting and there's no lawyer by their side. the California guys freaked. Like, I'd never let my client go out in a gathering like that. Well, that's part of, who we were. And, the other program we had early on was Buy Greater Austin, because the big companies come here and purchasing management and the easy thing is to call the supplier Joe or Jane on the East Coast or the West Coast, but who's here in Austin who can service you? And that was a big part of expanding business here in Austin.
So you mentioned your dad was very inspirational and influential in your energy. Who do you look up to nowadays? Who's a mentor? Or, who's
they're a lot younger than I am.
Okay. The
mentors that I have, because I'm very selective at this point of the people I'm around, and I don't want to be around bitchers and moaners, anyone bitching and moaning. So,
There's no time for that. I love it.
And so even some of my own friends that just want me to entertain them, that's a one side,
Right.
I try to keep my energy for the productive things that I want to do. And so my mentors are, some of the young women at Young Women's Alliance, asking them for advice. I also work at I serve on the engineering board at the University of Texas. And so some of the young women in engineering, the statistics are pretty strong for how many women are women in engineering. We still, as an aside, need to work with more of those women to become entrepreneurs, because somehow they just don't see themselves that way as much as the guys do. I don't know what that's about, but we need to be working on that. Yeah. And I keep up with people across the country that I've known all my life. So, like, I have a friend in Seattle who's an entrepreneur, and he's just done amazing stuff up there in Seattle and helped a lot of young people himself. But I keep up with my high school, my Gloucester High School class.
Nice.
And when I go back, one of them who graduated with me went on to work for Chief Justice Blackmun and helped with the Equal Rights Amendment, right? And so it's exciting when people go, wow, you still keep up with them? Well, it takes work, because if you're going to keep up, it's two sides to a relationship, right? And, how do you keep up? Well, now it's easier with this. So for my birthday, I think I'm going to have group Zoom calls around the country, right?
Yeah, it's that much more common, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
So you've been on, a lot of boards, you're still on a lot of boards, and the Thompson Group, your firm, you've been running since '93. Tell us about some of the kind of work that you do there, the kinds of clients you're working with. Give us more background on your firm and what you do.
Well, the firm then, it got up to about 30 something people. And now I work with consultants, and then I'm kind of the key person. And so the work we did where people would come to town and didn't know how to get connected or have their people connected. And so, like St. Ed's board, I served on as a trustee at St. Edward's University, and that's a wonderful school if you haven't toured there, because many of those kids are the first child in the family to go to college. And they're, a different ilk, and they're more about, in my opinion, giving back and helping others. And so, but still working with them. How do you enter a room and know who you want to talk to? Because otherwise they stand outside the door, right? Wishing and hoping, something like that. And then some people have companies that they want introductions to. And after a while, knowing the CEOs of the companies, and granted, I had put the proverbial leg up when you're involved with the chamber and you meet the CEOs. But CEOs in town then, the town was so busy, the CEOs didn't know each other. So I can remember an event that the CEO of AMD said, "Is that the head of IBM in Austin over there?" And yes, haven't you met? No. So from that, we started a group at the chamber that had CEOs coming just to a meeting with themselves, because they didn't want to be bothered, so to speak, with other people coming up, because they really wanted to meet their kin, so to speak, in
It
Austin.
appears, yeah.
Yeah, and now you can imagine what it's like now when someone comes to town.
Wow.
You know, it has to be hard. We really need a checklist of what's going to happen with you, I think, and your company,
Mhm.
both for training and introductions, because you want the younger people to grow and develop
Mhm.
also. And
Mhm.
it's hard in this rush economy now. And you talk
Yeah.
about volunteering and balancing, you know, with your family when they're working how many hours. And like my son works at National Instruments and he talks all day. So,
Right.
and he's an introvert, right? So he comes home to dinner and he
Drained.
doesn't want to talk.
Yeah, nothing.
And-
yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's hard.
Not good, not good.
Indeed.
So, and so I made personal introductions, I made group introductions, I taught them how to network. I also would keep up on a lot of information that they needed to know in the community. And so it worked wonderfully for both sides.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're just a natural connector, right? It's just
I am.
kind of who
I
you
think
are.
I am. I think of that. And well, you know, like getting the plane to Phoenix was the first trip I've taken out of town in 2 years. And it's so good at the airport, you're almost running through the line to get on the plane, right?
Well, yeah,
But there's a
generally
young
that's
woman-
how it goes for me.
Right. And yeah, I imagine. And the thrill of the deal, right? How late can you be and still make it?
Yes.
So, but there was a young woman beside me in line. And before we got on the plane, I found out she was getting her master's at the University of Texas. And it's in mental health for first responders.
Oh, wow.
Right? Well, I
Oh.
wouldn't even thought
lot of
of that. But then when you think about it, you think, well, sure. And so she emailed me yesterday or text and just said, so can we meet and go for a walk?
Oh.
Another new friend.
Wow.
I don't meet a stranger, and I talk to everybody on their walk, you know, I walk every single day, minimum 3 miles a day.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, sometimes I figure for some people, I'm the only other person they're going to talk to that day.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a different people you do walking dates with and talk
Right.
for your walk?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. And one has a company called Bilinguistics, and another one is attorney in town and who worked for some big law firms. Now he works for some, and he chooses the routes we're going to walk every Friday
Okay.
morning. So I look forward to that, just hearing where we're going today.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's good. And, you know, another one from Apple. And then if he's not walking 1 week, then his wife walks with me and a real through walk. Yeah, so that's fun. And learning, you know, it's how you're going to learn every day.
Yeah.
Well, that
You
was
got to be ahead of the game. And how are you
Yeah.
going to train yourself not to listen to negative news?
right.
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 Well,
Because you get sucked,
that was
you
what
get
you
kept,
sucked right in.
that's what kept
Mhm.
coming up and when I was doing my research and reading your articles was the mentoring and being a mentor and finding a mentor. It seems to be a huge
Strategic.
thing in your life.
Mhm.
Yes, it is. It is. It
Yeah.
is. Because people will say, well, I don't even know how to do that. Right.
Right.
So there's a basic training because some people even just shake your hand is a challenge.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, how many of those wimp handshakes? And so, you know, what I do, especially with the young students, how are they going to learn if I don't teach them?
Right.
So if I meet them at an event, I'll just quietly say, just look me in the eye now. And let's shake hands again.
Try this
And-
again.
And
Okay.
right. And because and then they apologize. They said, listen, there's no need to apologize. And who's going to teach all those kids on the east side all of these skills
Right.
in Austin? Right.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out a way to do that because it gives
Especially
them the
now.
leg up.
Especially now because the younger generation is like, man, they're just because of the way they've been raised, either, you know, over supervised and
Yes.
too much screen time. And now it's social media, being able to kind of say whatever they want online and not knowing how to act in person. I mean, these this younger generation
sad.
is
That's a lot.
a concern.
It's huge.
It's a
It's
concern.
huge. Well, my Samsung technician on my refrigerator yesterday told me this, that what happens with the young kids is they just get together in a group. If one of them's having a refrigerator problem, they're on Instagram and all that. In the Carolinas, where Samsung is big, right? And all of a sudden, Samsung, the quiet company, is not used to reading and seeing everything that's wrong out there, right? And he said it's kind of as a generational thing. These kids just speak up, right?
Yeah, they have access to the technology that enables it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, like, you talk about kind of like lifelong learning and whatnot. What would have been some of your hardest lessons?
Slowing down is a hard lesson for me, and just being quiet when you know the answer, and having some other people have an opportunity to stand and do that. And I have too many ideas in my head. Like when I'm speaking with you, the challenge for me to focus is that I already have 4 or 5 ideas floating right out here. And that's just,
He's all queued up, ready to go.
that's who I am. See,
Yeah.
so that frustrates some people because, well, and it frustrates me at times because you can come across as a babbling person, but it's when you have all that going on all the time, you have to look at that as a gift that you have, that other people can just have one idea and
Right.
maybe another. And I'm blessed because I have 5, right?
Yeah.
That works some days.
Well, what do you got queued up back there?
Right. It's like, what's going to happen next to Austin, and what do we have to do? We can't stop, right?
Uh-huh.
And so now, the shutdown for COVID, we have, people
Keep growing
coming
back
out
up.
again.
Yeah.
How can we make, keep Austin friendly?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're as friendly as we used to be. I don't know that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And buy Greater Austin, as I say, Austin in t-shirts, right? Buy Greater Austin, keep Austin friendly. And what are we doing for the newcomers? What kind of sheet, or what kind of are we going to do to get them involved sooner rather than later?
Mm-hmm.
Because Lord knows, with 1,000 nonprofits, opportunities are here.
Well, maybe
and we
it's
need
Get
that.
Involved Austin
Yeah,
t-shirt.
get involved. Right. Yes. And on the back, just have a list of how you do that. Right.
Yeah.
There you go. And
Am I welcome? Am I welcome to come?
Yeah,
join the
team. Join the team. Of course, I'm a purple power girl, so I'd have the purple shirt, but I don't know what color. It goes burnt orange here. When you go to UT. But I've been blessed by Austin because I have this opportunity. I mean, who knew me sitting on the School of Engineering next to Rex Tillerson at Exxon at the time? We were on a panel together.
Oh,
And he
wow.
says to me, "You really have an interesting life." And I said, I really do have an interesting
He said,
life.
"You damn straight."
I felt like saying to him, we always know when you're in a meeting because the security is
A little more detail.
a little more detail blinking on the corner.
Wow.
So, but I love to help people. And my kids will go, "You never met a stranger in the speed line at the checkout at the grocery store, Mom." It's that's, again, my gift.
I love it.
Well, you do a lot with your people. I mean, your reviews are great online.
You must be talking about Jake.
No, you, Christian. No,
We try hard. We set a high bar, and we just, I think it's just part of our values. But thank you for noticing. I appreciate you making that comment.
and I read about 2 of the people that you've had on, and that I want to meet, that you've already had with
Okay.
these.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we'll make a connection.
You're right,
Yes, ma'am.
because they're impressive. So here I am. I'm going to stay, and you're staying, right?
That's right.
So we have miles to go before we sleep, right?
Okay.
And so I'll be back, and you'll be back, and we never know where we'll meet again.
This is true. Well, Carol, this has been amazing.
I'm so grateful that you had me here.
Oh, you're a treasure. Thank you for your time and effort, and just for visiting with us and sharing some of your just knowledge and wisdom. It's so amazing.
Can we just ask you a couple? We have a speed round question right before we wrap. So this is just quick answers. I'll go first. Favorite neighborhood in Austin?
Favorite neighborhood? Well, I enjoy the Duval neighborhood just north of the university, where my son lives there, where you can walk around and go to Quacks and Julio's and and people talk to each other there.
Yeah.
And that's where I was for Snowmageddon. I lived over there for 9 days.
Oh, wow. Oh, that was a time. Favorite music venue?
You can't beat Willie. And I just, because in the old days, it was John Denver, I saw him the last time here at UT, just by himself playing 9 different guitars through the whole thing. So,
wow. All right. Favorite cafe?
Favorite, well, for coffee cafe, it's, Epoch Coffee Place. It's on Far West here because they all know what I drink.
Which is what?
It is a latte with extra hot, no foam, skim milk, and a large, right?
Okay.
And so that's good. And the restaurant that I love in town, they've made it through COVID, but Sharon Watkins here at Chez Z is only 10 minutes from my home, and they do a fabulous job. And she's been a benefactor or giving food to so many people, groups in town. You get to be the volunteer extraordinaire in that regard.
So cool.
But she does. Some of the restaurants, are going by the by, which is sad, because sushi, who'd believe we have sushi here? And but I love that too. You need that fish for your brain power.
That's right.
Right.
Fish
when you brought up, that's part of it. That why I'm as savvy as I am in some regards.
Okay.
All that
There
fish.
you go.
So you can.
Let's see. Favorite park?
Well, I like Zilker Park.
How about
Pease Park is fun, but
favorite music festival or festival? Any festival?
well, I have to say South by Southwest Festival, because it has the international flavor, and you just never know. There are so many surprises involved with that. And I've spoken, a few times. One of the ones that was about people moving here during retirement and how can they connect, because again, you have them here, and how do you integrate those people? And someone said, how would you do it? And I said, well, you go up to Sun City and you have a lot of retired CEOs, right? And you hire a bus to bring them down to be speakers or whatever for South by, or be part of South by. And then going home, you just have margaritas on the bus. And then they'll do it every year. Right?
Perfect.
Love it.
Let's see. Favorite gadget?
Tell them my favorite gadget, Kai.
Oh, Kai's still over there. Hey, Kai.
Yeah, he's my go-to. Listen, one of the best things about Austin was meeting Kai at Starbucks 10 years ago.
Oh, I bet. He's awesome.
He's a wonderful resource source and a kind, patient person.
Great human. Yeah.
Great human being, right? You're fortunate to have him, and vice versa. So
indeed we are.
My favorite gadget is, I say a coffee machine, but it's just not in my house. That's my favorite. That's my favorite gadget, because a lot of this technology, was later coming. Some kids, everybody else is kind of brought up with it, but it took a while to adjust to have. But we had Apple. I had a computer store in Austin early on, and where they stand in line on Saturday morning to buy their computer. And when that new Apple was coming out, you had to keep a list of, I forget, there were like 90 people on the list. And what a day, right? I
Right.
mean, it's amazing.
Mm. Okay, favorite software.
My favorite software. My favorite software is going to be something involved with networking software, right? Just to connect with the universe. That's
Okay.
it.
And favorite book?
My favorite book. Well, I'll tell you a book that everyone ought to be reading is this,
please.
or have on your shelf, is Silicon Valley Handbook,
Okay.
because it tells about cities around the world.
Okay.
And here's another one of my favorite go-to books,
The 100-year life. Oh, cool.
100-year life, right?
Whoa.
It should be 103-year life.
103-year life is
Ooh.
going to be my new version for that, right? That's another thing. People don't read these days like they used to. And you have to read. You just, to serve civilization today, you have to read. And, you could read to kids online. You can be reading. So
Mhm.
people have no excuse to say, I can't get across town, the traffic's too bad. Well, let's make it easy for you, right?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and buy that one at your recommendation.
Okay.
There it
All
is.
right.
Ordered.
No, it has,
Oh,
it's
The 100-year life.
right. And there have been other ones since then, but I mean, it's important.
I think I'm gonna
important.
live to 150 is what I'm shooting for.
I bet you are. I bet you are. So you just really have to have your watch on to keep your miles up every day, right? It's all about, exercising and your mental health.
They'll print you out a heart whenever you need it too, pretty soon.
Yeah. That's yeah.
So how can people that are listening keep in touch with you on the social media platforms or wherever else?
Well, I was just talking about that today. I have to figure out a way, because I still have a lot to give and a lot of people need to hear it.
Yeah.
So what am I going to devise, whether it's an age thing? And then, I have ideas for diversity of how some of those people can get involved and how are they partnered up. I mean, I don't know if you met the head of Houston Tillotson University. I mean, she's a phenomenal human being, and she has an engineering degree. She's on the engineering board at Ohio State, right?
Wow.
And she's got a big job over there, right? How do you get them, and how do those kids get placed, and how do they get placed and then mentored to make sure they're a success at their job, so they're not discouraged. And the chambers, we have a Hispanic chamber, we have a Black chamber, we have an Asian chamber, and we have a gay chamber, and Austin chamber. And that's another, to hear those stories.
Super.
And even have a panel with some of them together. And right now, this very moment, females head every one of those chambers of commerce. It's a whole new day.
That's so cool.
Isn't that
Very
cool?
cool. That's amazing.
That's cool. So I have to ask you your favorite restaurants in town.
Mine?
Yes.
Well, you know where I like to go after the show and get the bolognese is that place Justine's.
Oh yeah.
And they got they have a great food there, as well as a nice hang. And then, well, geez, I'm not, that's, I can't, I don't know. Cause that, I don't live there, but there's what's the famous Mexican place on, what's it? South Congress? Is that
Grows?
What is it?
Grows?
Grows.
You have the big oak tree, area outside and
Yeah.
Grows,
Is that the street I'm thinking about? South Congress that goes over
Congress?
the bridge, and there's the thrift stores or the
Yeah,
vintage stores.
that's South
Yeah, probably
Congress.
Gueros.
Gueros. Yeah.
Further down,
Yeah,
or
Gueros.
further down,
Yeah.
Mantle Rancho is a popular one, but yeah, Gueros must be it.
That's a great place.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's kind of
But
touristy. and all,
like
but-
Magnolia Cafe is closed. And so, those are things that people went as a standby when you came to town.
Uh-huh.
So it's, supporting those restaurants
Sure.
now, getting them back on their feet.
Yeah.
So,
Indeed. Well, on the theme of connecting, you're the great connector. But I gotta thank Kai for connecting us. Thank you, Kai.
Yes.
Such a great human, and we're so awesome. He's on our team, and
And he loves working there. He loves working there.
oh,
So,
I hope to God so.
No, he does.
Awesome. But Carol, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome. And
Yeah.
if I can ever be of service to you, call me.
Well,
Okay.
likewise. Thank you.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right.
Thank
Alrighty.
you so
Well,
much,
good seeing you.
Carol. It's great to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Digital Transformationists podcast brought to you by Principio Consulting. Principio Consulting provides flexible, scalable, expert-level IT and business solutions to enhance productivity and decrease cost. Check out our other episodes, access show notes and links, and listen to some great bonus content on our website at principio.com. Like what you heard? Subscribe, rate, and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And tell a friend. We love making new friends. I'm executive producer Katie Thomas. Victor Vargas is our lead engineer. Alejandro Caballero is our editor. Rodrigo Martinez and Stephanie Harrison are our writers. If you want to find out how we can help you with your organization's digital transformation, or if you just want to find out more about digital transformation, send us an email at contact@principio.com. Thanks for tuning in.